So I've seen a lot of people pronounce Gris like Gris, like in French how it is. But Nomada is actually a Spanish company from Spain, and in Spanish they pronounce it like Gris,
Gris.
like Greece. So I'm gonna say it like that. Anyway, about it, the point is that I was completely wrong. I don't really like making videos where I do nothing but shit on a bad video game, but I'm gonna do that a little bit in this one. So I guess think of this as a recommendation for Greece rather than a massive shit talk of Yiik, because really that's what it is. The thing that inspired me to make this video is that I really love Greece. Let me explain. When I was first looking at Greece, I talked to Dawson about it, and when I explained how it's a game about going through the stages of grief, grief. Anyway, he said the game sounded pretentious, and that wasn't my first reaction. To me, it seemed like that's just sort of what the game was about. But pretentiousness is kind of hard to quantify. He asked what games could be considered pretentious, and why, and I was a little stumped. I thought about it for a while, and it was a tough thing to put my finger on. I could tell you what pretentiousness is. It's when something or someone thinks they're smarter or deeper than they actually are. But that's a really big hole and can be interpreted a billion different ways. But then, a month after, Yiik came out. Pronounced Y2K. Nah, that's dumb as hell. This game is Yiik. I'd heard a lot about it, and from everything I'd heard, it sounded like I'd found my answer. First, let's talk about Gris really quick. The game is a wonderfully unique experience. The animation, the backgrounds, everything about the art is gorgeous. The music is fantastic, and the gameplay is interesting. You move a little bit slower than other platformers to help you take in the atmosphere. It really does help to draw you in, so from a technical standpoint, it's kind of amazing. The next most interesting thing is the setting. Like I said, it takes place in worlds that are visual metaphors for the 5 stages of grief. You start at denial, dropping to the floor whenever you press a button, and moving through a gray, feelingless space. After that, you move to anger, with howling red winds you need to block out. Over to bargaining, where a little bit of hope shines as you feed a little guy some apples. Depression, the endless dark ocean made slightly brighter with friends. And acceptance, where your singing begins to rebuild this broken world. The visual metaphors are really clever. There was a ton of thought put into them. For instance, the black force that chases you and screams at you and seems to try to kill you can't actually physically hurt you, but it gives you a constant feeling of dread whenever it shows up. Kinda like anxiety. It says so much with no words, but it never breaks its bounds or tries to do anything outside of the one thing it's saying. It's about the 5 stages of grief. It sticks to its metaphor, but it does so much with it. It's incredibly emotionally resonant. I cried at the end, I got goosebumps when I was thrown into that world of birds, and I made a sound like "oh" when I escaped the eel. It was an endeavor that wanted to dig deep into one thing, and it was entirely successful. So now we get to the fun part where I shit on Yiik. So I wrote all of that before I'd actually played Yiik. But I'd heard from several sources that the writing was cringy and self-indulgent. So I thought it would have writing about on the same level as a David Cage game. And I feel like that's really misleading.
Hold on a goddamn second.
Stop.
Why are you going into detail about this?
This is not funny or fun.
I sighed as the elevator began to shake, vibrating with motion.
He's no, it's
I
just
thought that it was a she.
Yeah!
That
Mine
is 3
too!
different words for the same
fucking
thing.
thing! Yeah, you already said that literally
50 times.
Yeah. Oh, it's so much worse. It makes mistakes David Cage would never make at his dumbest. I played this game with my writing friend Megan, and it took us an hour to get past the first dungeon, because we spent the entire time dissecting every line. This writing isn't bad, this writing is garbage. The author, Andrew Allinson, establishes things, establishes them again, and then establishes them a 3rd time as though they weren't established before. He also establishes things and then completely forgets about them entirely. And he goes off on these rambling tangents that he overwrites the shit out of and that add nothing to the story. There's no sense of flow anywhere. The writing is constantly interrupted by this needless prose. There's no sense of tone. He'll info dump about something entirely unrelated in a moment that's supposed to be tense. Or just pull a 180 and make it super quirky when previously we were worried about impending doom. The writing begs you to laugh and to ponder, when, I mean, it succeeds, but you're laughing at the fact that they're messing up the most basic stuff and pondering why anyone thought this was a-okay. He's trying to be quirky, and I had thought he was going to sort of overdo this and become really cringy like a lot of these do, but he does it so little, and he mixes it so much with the prose, you don't notice it half the time. And worst of all, while playing this game, we found multiple points where he could have put a funny little joke. You know what would be funny? If I went over there and I found 50 cents, but in this couch, there was like $200.
Oh.
This man is not nearly that clever, though. The parts that are cringy aren't cringy in a this man is trying to be funny kind of way. They're cringy in a okay, that's not okay kind of way. Yiik is the perfect game to illustrate pretentiousness. Everything in Yiik is hampered by the writer telling and not showing. The reason the only thing I've talked about is the writing so far is because the writing is most of the game. And if it wasn't for that, there's a lot of stuff in this game that could have been really good. Whereas Gris is able to tell by showing alone. How they use inspiration is another good indicator. In Gris, I could see a little bit of inspiration for the art may have come from Tom Moore. Anger's red on whites reminding me of the end of Secret of Kells, and the underwater caverns reminding me a little bit of Song of the Sea. But it's still very different than both of those. It's striving to be its own thing and just taking pointers. They're whispers of influence and a concert of originality. Whereas Yiik is the author screaming, I want to make a game that's Earthbound mixed with Scott Pilgrim. All of Yiik's ideas are ideas someone else had, and it doesn't do anything to really improve upon them. If anything, it makes them slightly worse. The combat is an interesting idea, but it gets really boring when the record starts really slow, and it takes a while to do your attack. I would rather have regular turn-based combat than this. And these comparisons bring me to the thesis of the whole thing, the absolute definition of pretentiousness that I arrived at. They put probably years of work into this because they thought they were creating a brilliant, evocative art piece that would pay wonderful homage to the games of the past. Andrew probably thought his writing would improve upon it, that his prose would be adored and hailed as a step forward for the medium of video games. And they thought all this would just work without putting in any work or any thought. And that is the kicker. All of this confidence was unearned, and they shouldn't have released it without at least someone doing a few proofreading runs. It's like he's never talked to anyone who's ever written anything before, but still assumes he's got it down pat cause he got an A in his AP English class. I don't know why the game relies on the writing so much. Andrew Allinson, so far as I can tell, is a musician and sound designer, but the game leans on the writing like it was written by a famous author, whereas all of the confidence of Gris is earned. A lot of these guys are professional artists from outside of the medium who came together. Conrad Rosé, who drew these, is one of them. He was one of the founding members of the company. I mean, it was founded when he met with two AAA game devs about making art for video games. This was a team of professionals who had earned their confidence over years of work, and who also double-checked each other's work. And it shows. Everything feels like it was thought to death in Gris, while nothing feels really thought out in Yiik. Each of the stages in Gris have imagery that fits perfectly with its stage of grief, without having a large sign that reads depression, a la Yiik's overwriting. The music was tailor-made for every event in Gris, driving home the tone with force. No moment in Yiik made me feel anything like this moment in Gris. And the art was made with such passion and care that you would be hard-pressed not to be blown away. Gris is the beautiful, emotionally resonant, brilliant, and artistic game the Yiik men thought they were making, but that they didn't have the talent, the patience, or the understanding of any medium to make.